Hello there. I'm Dr. Autumn, leadership consultant, wellness coach, author, and I'm incredibly grateful to be your host of the Align Living podcast. I'm here to equip you with the tools, inspiration, and practical tips necessary to lead a life of wholeness and pursue greater shalom in your life and that of your families, teams, and communities. My mission is to empower you to lead from a place of holistic well-being. It's time to say peace out to the fatigue, fog, and frustration of living in a place that lacks abundant well-being. Join me as we embark on a comprehensive exploration of spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, social, and economic well-being, all within the comforting embrace of one podcast. Hey, good people. Welcome back to the Aligned Living podcast. Really excited today because I get to interview a guest that I've been wanting to have on the show ever since I met her. Chrissy Weeks is the executive director of a fantastic nonprofit in Washington, D.C. called DC127. I won't dive into the mission and vision behind this org because we talk about it in our interview and there's some information in the show notes. But ever since I met her, we were at a community development gathering of leaders in the city, and we started talking about having interruptible lives. She had written an article on this, and just it's one of her soapboxes, and I loved it. Immediately, my aligned living brain is thinking about how this idea alone can transform our lives significantly. Moving us from more fragmented lives to wholeness. We discussed in this episode how having interruptible lives impacts us positively from our emotional well-being to mental, physical, social, spiritual. You'll want to plug in. This organization she leads is on an incredible mission, but more so just to get to hear us talk about everything from dopamine to margin to just a holistic health in all the ways. Community. It just was a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you do too. Well, I am super excited to have Chrissy Weeks with us here, executive director of an incredible nonprofit in DC, Washington, DC, but she also has a lot of other roles, and I'll let her tell you about that in a second. But thank you so much for being here, Chrissy. Super excited for this convo.
Yeah, I'm delighted to be here. Really glad to join you this morning.
Awesome. Well, I am going to ask you to share a little bit about yourself, but I just want to give everyone some context of how I met Chrissy and then why I'm like, I need you on my podcast. So we actually were at a gathering of, it was just leaders throughout the DMV, which is the DC, Northern Virginia, Maryland area. And most of us are in Christian community development in some way, shape, or form. And I started talking to Chrissy, and she just had such a like a personality that just like draws you in to like want to talk to her more about like just life and what's going on. And I was fortunate to hear a little bit about one of her soapboxes. We all have these personal soapboxes, and I love talking to people about what they're passionate about. But she brought up this idea of interruptible lives. And as soon as she said that phrase, I'm like, oh, we need to talk about that. Because immediately I was thinking about all the ways that could positively impact us in the way of aligned living. So Chrissy, I would prefer to have you share a little bit about who you are first, and then we'll jump into this idea here.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, I currently lead an organization called DC127. We, through our work, mobilize local churches around the call of strengthening and stabilizing families impacted by the foster care system here in DC. Mm-hmm. So we help the city recruit new foster homes, and we also support foster families as well as kinship caregivers. And we also support biological families who may have some risk factors of their children being removed into foster care. And we do all of that work through the local church here. I have been in ministry for over 25 years
Mhm.
and in different capacities in different parts of the world, and have been in DC for almost 10 years now, here with my two kids and my husband and my dog in the
Mhm.
Manor Park neighborhood of Washington, DC.
Okay, I love that. I didn't realize that because I've been in the DC area for 10 years too, and I also have two kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, so before we jump into talking about what it means to have interruptible lives and why this could transform all of us in a positive way, um, tell us a little bit about like what you enjoy and what makes you you and some of your like hobbies or priorities.
Oh, that is such a funny question. Oh my gosh, the things that I enjoy are kind of wild and wildly different. So,
Mm-hmm.
I played soccer for a number of years. I love soccer. However, I am a giant NBA head. I love NBA
Hey,
basketball.
I didn't know that. I grew
Yeah,
up
I
playing
love
basketball.
NBA basketball. I
Oh,
love the WNBA. Let's go
hmm.
watch a basketball game sometime if you're out there listening. And I also studied in college musical theater. I don't know
Mm,
how you marry the NBA with musical theater, but one of the things that I deeply enjoy myself and with my family and with friends are the arts in general. So I
mm,
love going to see live stage plays. I love going to see musicals. I love listening to the symphony play music. I think there's so much about our humanity in the arts that is really
mm,
revealed to us as creatures who are made by God, and really show a reflection to the world about our uniqueness and our creativity and how we're made. And so those are some things that really light my fire, I guess, as you could say.
mm,
NBA basketball and musicals and theater. There you go.
mm. I love it. I love it. I had no idea. Okay, that's so fun. Did you? I don't know if you knew, but I'm like a big basketball nerd. I grew up playing basketball. If I wasn't injured, I'd be still playing pickup basketball. Unfortunately, we're in DC. The Wizards aren't too hot, but
Oh, they're going to have a good season. I think they're going to have a good season. You know, we've got
Okay.
Trey Young now. They've made some good trades, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
So this idea of living an interruptible life, I would love for you just to tell us what that means to you and why it's valuable to us as humans.
Yeah, I'll start with this concept, obviously, is not new. I think it's something that I've thought about for a number of years now because when my husband and I lived in St. Louis, Missouri, we both went to seminary there. One of my professors said to me many years ago in conversation that we were having after class one day, how you respond to interruptions in your life often reveals what you worship. And
Mm,
that just sentence declaration has sat with me my entire life since that moment
mm,
because it applies to many areas, everywhere from being a neighbor to being a parent to being a leader and a manager. All of those things, we are constantly interrupted and disrupted in our lives with things. But how we respond to them
mm,
will show the things that we love and we value first. Whether we respond with anger, whether we respond with frustration, sheer exhaustion, whatever it is, it reveals something about ourselves. Um, to us, if we're able to take the time to reflect it, it can reveal some really precious, important things to us, but it can also have a major impact on the other people around us. And we live in, I live in the District of Columbia. We live in a culture here that is very prized on having an organized, strategized, manicured, and often a life that is driven by your value is your productivity.
Mm.
And so, with that reality behind many things, it's hard, especially for Christians, to release and be free from the things that they are valuing and holding on to in what they worship in terms of their own productivity, their ability to control their schedule, all of those things. It means that we often forget that God is always at work and that we get to be a part of what he's doing, even if it means our time or situations are being interrupted by him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting we're having these conversations because between the two of us, we probably have 75 hats and live very full lives, but it's like a personal, like it's important. Like when you say, okay, God, how can I steward everything you've given me well? It's like could be countercultural to say, hey, I need to make more margin in my life just to have some empty space to see a neighbor and help them out, or to, for me with the aligned living and health coaching stuff, it's like you can't be healthy and have energy without leaving margin to prepare some whole foods for you and your family, or to have margin to even take 15 minutes to move your body and exercise, or to pause and breathe and meditate and ground yourself to help your body maybe go from a stressful state to, more inner calm. So this idea of margin is really, really important. So I'm going to ask you a question about that, but when you talk about interruptible lives, I love what you're saying about how do you respond. And I always start when I'm coaching people with, we have to have self-awareness. And so when you ask yourself, how am I responding? So we're both parents, and you think about, you're in the middle, you're locked into something, your kids interrupt you. Do you get frustrated and snap back at them, or do you have a more like, you know loving posture and how you respond? Like that is such a good like thermometer or like gauge of like where we need to do work as far as like emotional and mental well-being. So I'm going to ask you more about that in a second, but what I want to ask you first is, in talking about interruptible lives and the social well-being pillar of aligned living, clearly when you have an interruptible life, it gives space to help others. And so that's straightforward, right? Like if you allow yourself to be interrupted, you can go help someone in need, or smile or be kind to somebody. I want to ask you, how does that impact us though positively when we allow ourselves? How is that transforming us into healthier, better people when we know how to handle that well?
Yeah. I mean, my gut response to that is you get to be more human.
Mm.
I don't know how else to say it or to think about it. I think we are so reliant on, and again, this isn't new what I'm saying. We're so reliant on technology. We're so addicted to our computers and our phones, which are our lifelines in many ways to doing the work that God has given us to do. But when we're able to set things aside, I mean, even when you're talking about giving margin, I heard a pastor once say, what would it mean to edit things from your life
Mm.
so that you are more available? And that doesn't mean just to be interrupted. That means more available to pay attention to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
to spend time with a friend. It means that you can be more fully the woman or the man who God has made you to be, because there's a sense of trust and surrender and rest that happens when you're able to say, I'm not going to hold on to these things so tightly that my heart wants to value first. I can release them a little with open hands, trusting that God will do all of the things that need to get done that I'm a part of, but I am his child And I can take a moment for myself. And when I'm able to do that, I am more rested. I am more present with people. I'm more able to be who he has made me to be. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I just thought of something super random. I'm curious your thoughts because I've been studying with emotional and mental health. Like I could nerd out on neurotransmitters all day, like serotonin, dopamine, and all of that. But there's been this with social media and the rise of, people having their devices on them and all these dings coming in. We're constantly distracted and interrupted by, a text message, an Instagram message, this or that. But it's different because we are constantly getting these dopamine hits, and it's actually scientifically not good for us because we start to, when we're used to constant dopamine hits, and maybe that's why we find some sort of joy in these constant interruptions from our phone, because we get a dopamine hit and then a crash. And over time, what this does is it makes you have less pleasure in the small, normal things, like going for a walk and seeing. I love going for a walk and looking at like the beautiful sky or these flowers that are blooming, or the small things just in interactions with people, like smiling at a homeless person, they smiling back, giving you a peace sign or something. Like we lose the ability biologically to find as much pleasure with these dopamine hits. Now, so we accept that kind of interruption almost because selfishly it makes us feel good. Now, when we start thinking about delayed gratification in the beauty of what's to come, when we allow ourselves to be interrupted by somebody, let's say you have a really full day and somebody needs help, and that interruption might feel like an immediate like stressor because you're like, oh, I feel bad, I should help, blah blah blah, and your heart's posture is not coming from a place of joy. How do we start to move our mind and body and spirit into a space where we could find joy in those interruptions? What are like practices we could put in place, because it's a very different type of interruption than these other things that like we've become so used to. So how can people start to move in that direction?
Yeah. I mean, when I'm hearing you speak and process this, I'm thinking about when the dopamine hits happen. And we even see this in reporting on children with devices. This is the same for adults, just
Mhm.
in more fully developed brains. But we are then depleting our ability to have resilience,
Mm,
essentially. So
mm,
I saw a child psychologist speak about how when you're learning a new skill or learning something new, you are starting at a place, and when you're hoping to get at the end of learning something, but in between are these up and down waves of frustration while you're working to learn something new, whether it's a new skill or a new practice in your life. You have to work through frustration to get there. And when you have things like devices that give you dopamine hits, it means that you have less ability to work through that frustration in a
mm,
healthy direction, because you're wanting things now and
mm,
you're wanting to feel that dopamine hit now. And so, what are things that you can do? You can do very practical things like set clear, intentional times during the day where you are off your computer, where your phone is turned off and put away if you're able to do that. You can set do not disturb on your devices so people can't text you after certain times at night, and put different practices in place now, because our resilience is not as high as it used to be. And I think that that's generally true for a lot of people. You're going to have to work through some frustration to get through a new practice in your life. whether it's creating more margin or just doing something practically like turning your device off. That's one way to do it. But I would also say when you're turning those things off and making those important intentional decisions, that you are also maybe replacing them with something a little bit slower in your life, or replacing it with time that you're having with people in real life. So, yes, living an interruptible life, I have thought about this a lot in terms of my work at DC127.
Mm-hmm.
I would like the church and the body of Christ to be more interruptible and adaptable for the sake of their neighbor. But this also applies to you just being able to be interrupted by your kids or by your friend that would love some time with you or needs time with you, whatever that looks like. Text messages and speaking, on Zoom calls, all of those things are not the same as living embodied life with other
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can find ways to reduce the amount of dopamine that you are actively seeking and that we're all addicted to in one way or another, if you are able to sort of work through what are those areas in my life that I need to make some small changes, and then think about what does that mean? What do I replace it with or change it, exchange it for? That would make me a person that is growing resilience,
Mm-hmm.
ability to have some margin, not just for the sake of helping somebody, but just for the sake of being a human and being in relationship with other people around you, maybe knowing your neighbor in a
Mm-hmm.
different way.
Mm-hmm.
No.
For sure, for sure. And like going back to the whole like vision behind this podcast, like the pursuit of wholeness, um, I would almost argue, now talking through this with you, that and if we want to be healthy, happy, whole individuals, we want to flourish, we have to be resilient in these spaces, right? And if we need to, and to help with resilience, because life is always lifing, there's so many things outside of our control that happen. And what is our emotional state, our mental state, our spiritual state, right? When these when we hit these bumps in the road, and how, like, resilience is such an important conversation. So threading the needle, when we get to a place where we embrace having interruptible lives, when we embrace interruption with a good attitude, that means we're making progress towards this resilience, which just helps us live better lives, which helps us ultimately be more whole. Of course, it means putting aside some of the instant gratification, understanding that delayed gratification ultimately leads us to the things that we want as humans to thrive. So, my question then for you is, if somebody is like, okay, I actually find myself like getting irritated or stressed, I don't handle interruptions well. And we know that when you create space to do this, it's better for us. What things can people begin to do so that they're like, a year from now, I want to be embracing interruptions with joy? You
Yeah.
know, what are some things you think people could do?
Yeah. I mean, I think number one, our instinct is to think about these things in a very individualistic mindset
Mm-hmm.
where you are not going to climb your way out of being addicted to your phone on your own and giving yourself a lot of discipline. You need to have friendships, people that know you, people who are on the same page as you. So maybe you begin by naming some of these things that you see in your life with people that you love and people that know you and people who want more for you as well and that you want more for. And
Mm.
it's something that you agree on and you work on together. I remember, this is going to sound like a silly example, but I, in high school, had a throat clearing problem
Mm.
where I was doing it constantly. And I worked with a speech and language therapist to help me identify it and then figure out ways of documenting it, having people around me tell me when I was doing it, being aware of it to start with, and then having some ideas that we could put in place to reduce the amount that I was doing. And that eventually went away. So I think if you think right now, I'm just going to turn off my phone, I'm going to put it away, I'm going to, do all these things on my own, the way our bodies work in terms of dopamine, we're not going to do that well and consistently for on our own. We need other people in our lives to help with that. So I highly recommend naming these things with other people, having a couple people doing this with you. You don't need 12 people, but maybe 2 or 3 that you're doing this with. And then maybe even talking to somebody like you, Autumn, um, somebody that can help you think about what does aligned, holistic, flourishing life look like every day in your work, in your relationships. There, just being able to name it, be aware of it, is a great starting place.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have to remember you're not on an island. You're a person who was created to be in relationships with other people. So find some other people to talk with about this and come up with a plan together,
Mm-hmm.
something you guys can tackle
Mm-hmm.
together.
It's so funny. As you're talking, I'm thinking about like some of my most insanely stressful days. I swear to you, it's when I get calls when I have like friends or a neighbor or somebody like in a really intense situation. And it's so interesting because I find so much joy. It like makes my life better in the midst of the stress to be able to show up for other people. And it really ties to like communal versus individualistic thinking, because if everyone, posture themselves, to find joy in living these interruptible lives, I'd be there for you, you'd be there for me, and it just like creates this really quite fantastic picture. So I'm going to actually give a couple like tips that come to my mind that I think help people um, find joy if they're, in the pursuit of this, largely because I want to give you a minute to think about my next question. So, you and I would agree that young people have such valuable voices, on this planet. Like, I wrote my book, The Playground Leader, not because I became a mom, but when I was working with high schoolers, largely those that were coming from challenging situations, like, I would tell them things that they could do, and they're like, no, not me, but they had brilliant ideas and so much gifting. And I feel like for our world, just communally in the pursuit of wholeness, we need to start elevating the voices of these young people. And so in your work in the foster care space, I would love to hear a couple stories where you have like a nugget of wisdom around these concepts that we can learn from the younger generations. Because sometimes as adults, like you said, we become so busy, we justify, we're like, we like have these blinders on and we're just trying to get through our days and this and that. But I feel like I would just love to know a couple, you don't have to, keep personal information personal, but just in general, like nuggets of wisdom, things that you've learned or other people have learned, um, that have come from just your time with these young folks. And mind you, a lot of these young folks are in challenging situations, yet they probably have resilience and have like brilliant things to share with us. And so I'll leave you to think about that for a minute. I'm gonna share with listeners just as you were talking about how important it is to have people around you um, in this pursuit of wholeness so that you find more joy in interruptible lives. I'm really big on aligned living, on having a really, really solid foundation, because if your foundation is cracked, if you're eating poorly, you're stressed, you're not getting enough sleep, it's really hard to have emotional intelligence or emotional maturity so that you can respond from a healthier, better place. And so this is why this space becomes super practical. I always say it's not the sexy things we get to talk about. It's take care of your gut, get those probiotics, because your serotonin levels, which are your happy hormones, are directly connected to gut health. Like, that is not fun. That's not entertaining, but it's essential to a life well lived. Like, you're going to be able to respond better to interruptions and stress when you have good gut health. But just a couple other practical tips. I think that our brains, we forget, is a huge energy suck when we just have too much bouncing around in our brains. And then that makes interruptions even more um, difficult to embrace. So I'm really big on creating space throughout our day to move your body, go for a walk, pray, meditate, because when you ground yourself, you bring in, you can help have a healthier perspective than when you enter back into public or space or work. You're just positioned, you're postured better for receiving interruptions in a healthier place. So these little things that everyone tells you to do, like breathe, right? Like sometimes it's easy just to brush them off, and like, what difference does it really make? But the difference in your quality of life between finding joy in interruptions versus chronic frustration, it makes a world of difference. And so I'm saying this to encourage everyone listening that, you know, these small foundational practices, like, ultimately are going to impact your life in a positive way and make a difference in the lives of others in a positive way. So but yeah, and just wrapping up, I'd love to hear from you, Chrissy, a couple stories you wanted to share and like nuggets of wisdom that we can learn from these younger folks out here. And then of course I want you to share with us like where people could find you, you know, and so on and so forth, which I'll also include in the show notes. But yeah.
Yeah. So we have a program at DC127 called Communities for Families. It's a program model that we developed after doing a lot of research for a couple of years with CFSA, which is our government partner, that's child welfare in DC, and also talking with families, with parents, hearing what are their needs, what's going on in their community, and developing a model really for the church. And what we do is we train volunteer teams, usually small groups from churches, to wrap around a family so that they have intentional, committed support for 6 to 9 months in a program through our staff who train them with trauma informed training, do regular check ins, and the team really helps the parent or the parents focus on goals for themselves while they're being an encouragement to them, also helping with childcare, getting to know the kids. And the hope is eventually that this team and this parent, once the formal program ends, will still remain in relationship with one another and maybe be brought into greater church community for the experience of just having greater community. Many of the parents who participate in the Communities for Families program grew up in foster care themselves and aged out of the system without a forever family, which is how it's often referred to. And so when you say they're coming from challenging situations, many of them are in situations where they are simply trying to survive day to day. And the things that I hear from them directly when we have family events, when we see them at different things around the city, or even run into them on the metro, which is really fun. Mm-hmm. They are working so hard to keep their family stable, to keep them together, to keep housing, to keep food on the shelves. One mom said to us, "I will never let my storms get my kids wet." Because she grew up in foster care, said it truly was a lived hellish experience for her. Mm-hmm. And she wants to, with all of her might, continue to advocate for policy changes in the city that are supportive of families. She continues to find the resources she needs. And find work that'll keep her family going.
Mm.
And she has done this without having extended community and relationships. And time again, I am just astounded as a white woman who has a lot of privilege in her life, looking looking at these families and hearing their stories, and going, that is resilience right
Mm.
there. Like, that is deep resilience. And she still needs community just
Mm.
like I do. And so I think that's one story, just incredibly encouraging. Another one is another mom who has one child, and she also grew up in the foster care system. She has sisters, and they were all separated by the
Mm.
system. And very difficult story, but she she found out about DC127 through one of her friends
Mm.
that did our program, Communities for Families. And so she essentially self referred into the program and said, I would just love some more community and people, because I haven't had that in my life. And she has also worked really hard to keep her family together in very hard circumstances.
Mm.
But she has seen where support, added relationships in her life has meant that she has greater emotional capacity
Mm.
to interact with her daughter. She's able to have some breaks. She has found a job that she really enjoys and actually works with a school schedule, which is a huge, huge deal. And she said to us at the end of the formal program, again, that she really looks forward to, now that she is in a better place, being the one who can give back and be the change for someone else.
Mm.
And it's fascinating, right? Families and parents who are coming from very hard circumstances, but have incredible resilience and insight and ability to advocate for what they need for their families, have really taught us what it means to step back, take a deep breath, and see what matters in life, and how the reality of needing relationships and greater community is something that's very human and something that can really change someone's trajectory. Yes, they need better access to housing opportunities. Yes, they need greater access to food benefits that have recently been stripped away. They need those things, and they need people who also know them and will know their kids and will be there to step in to encourage them and be a support to them, just like those moms can be a support to other people in their lives. So those are some recent,
Yeah.
just encouraging and kind of overwhelmingly stunning stories.
Yeah. Yeah. As you were talking, it just got me thinking about like how often, when we don't have positive, like good, healthy community around us, one of the biggest things I see in my health coaching is, stress is inevitable. The question is, how do we cope with it? And
Mm.
I feel like the default, even for someone in a seemingly from the outside, like good situation, so many people, because internally aren't building up like a healthy resilience through positive, healthy habits, like their default is to cope with stress in destructive ways. This really, really amazes me. But and sometimes if you have negative influences in your life, like people that aren't supportive of your health and growth, y'all could end up coping with your stress in negative ways together, and that could be even
Mhm.
more dangerous because you have justification now beyond your own mind. And so one of the beautiful things about healthy community is, you have the built-in accountability, but also like in that growth of emotional capacity and resilience, when stress happens, not if, when stress happens, your ability to cope with it in a life-giving, positive way just significantly increases. And so I'm just only mentioning that because it is so relevant. Like, I'm just in conversations daily where the default is to cope in an unhealthy way. And so if listeners, take a few things away from this conversation, it's self-awareness around having an interruptible life and the value in that, but how do you respond, and like maybe start to set baby goals around that, right? Like, that's huge. And then also like just identifying like, where is your emotional capacity and resilience in life, how do you respond to stress, et cetera, and just evaluating the community around you. So really, really good conversation. Thank you for the work that you do, Chrissy. Thank you for not only being a great leader in this space, and just having a compassionate heart that cares about these things, but also I know you would say you're on a journey, but we all are. So it's about progress,
Yeah.
not perfection. But thank you for also leading the way in acknowledging that the work will never end, and it's important to have margin in our lives for our own well-being so that we could show up well. Like, we want to set an example for those we're serving, those around us. And so thank you for that as well. Now, as we wrap up, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me in the Brookland neighborhood of Washington, D.C., where our office space is, if you ever want to come visit. Our website is www.dc127.org. You can read about our programs there. You can read about our history and see the things that are going on. And you can also, at the bottom of the homepage, sign up for our monthly newsletter, where you can read more of the stories that I just shared and hear about the good work that is happening in DC through the local church.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And with that newsletter, even if you don't live local, I encourage you to sign up, because that's actually, I remember seeing in my inbox after I talked to Chrissy about this Interruptible Lives, like an article came out about this and other things. So it helps with your own. We grow as people when we grow our perspective, when we grow our paradigm, diversified lenses and how we see the world. So it's just always good to hear their stories and be growing in that way. But anyways, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Chrissy, so much for being here. And until next time, stay aligned, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to the Aligned Living Podcast. I'm Dr. Autumn, your guide on this journey to shalom or wholeness. Ready to embark on this journey of self-discovery and transformation? Head over to autumnswain.com to learn more and to dive deeper into the world of aligned living. Until next time, stay aligned.